Home Depot paint mixers of Reddit. What is the weirdest thing you've had to color match? I worked at a store called Cloverdale Paint. I matched Sharpies, microscopic flecks of paint people scrapped off their walls, a woman's steel underwear, and more. Maybe the weirdest one was matching a guy's girlfriend's iris color. He wanted to paint something the color of her eyes, so he brought in a close-up photo of her. It was difficult because an iris isn't just one solid color, but it was fun and he left happy with this kind of smoky blue. The eye color one is very sweet and could be done in Photoshop. What you could do is take a really close-up picture of the iris, select just the iris with masking or magic wand selection, leave the pupil out, and then filters greater than blur greater than average, and it should turn it one averaged solid color of the thing you selected, in case that comes up again in the future or someone else wants to know lol. My friend would use it as the only soap in her shower. She loved the smell so much she even put it in her drawers. However, it is not great for your skin, harsh, and I find that it leaves a residue on my skin that doesn't leave me feeling exactly clean. It was also my grandpa's favorite soap, so I guess Irish Spring's demographic ranges from mid-20s females to 90-plus males. Good for them. Oh. Now that's long ago. I used to be very good at manually matching colors. No machines in those days. There was the standard bits of paper and cloth. One day someone walks in covered in dried paint, and asks me to match the color on their arm. Someone has spilled the paint all over him and they needed more, but had lost the color identification code somehow. He stood around patiently for an hour until I sorted out an exact match. Not Home Depot, but had someone bring a chocolate milkshake into our store wanting paint matched to it. My other favorite story is a couple who bought Ben Hogan's house in Westover Hills in Fort Worth. They brought in a sample of something that was oil-based paint and had nicotine stains. We tried to explain to them that it used to be white or off-white, but the yellowing of the paint and the nicotine had turned it to this snot yellow color. They didn't care. They wanted the color Ben Hogan had been living with, just freshened up. It's a tie between the large jar of ghee, clarified butter, and someone's skin. I got both of those within a week of each other. The skin thing was because a woman came in looking for a paint color that would match her skin, so I thought, fuck it, let's match her arm and see what happens. She loved it so much she ordered it for her whole house. I named that color Susan's arm. Edit, I forgot a couple of other weird ones. Scotch masking tape blue. Was really happy with how that one turned out. Multiple ottomans, a reading chair, dog fur, an egg, a painter's shirt and a painter's jeans. Whenever people ask me this question, I'll respond with "let me tell you about the skin woman," which is probably the worst out of context sentence you could hear out of a Home Depot employee. I was regrettably not present, but it sounds like they brought in their pet cat. Must have been much better behaved than mine lol. People will sometimes ask us to match paint they have on their hand or whatever, so like that just furry. I'm a tattoo artist, but I matched a skin tone to cover white spots on a black gentleman's hand. Not weird and not hard for me to do, but he was blown away after telling me how long he had the spots and how fast I made them disappear. I mixed dark brown with a hint of olive. I worked as a dye spotter for a couple of years at a photo production plant, student photos, etc. We had to use a palette of maybe 6-8 dyes to fill in printing errors and dust spots that would put white spots on people's portraits. I got really good at color matching on the fly for every kind of skin. Sort of kind of. The issue is that scars absorb and disperse the ink in a very unusual manner, making tattooing them relatively difficult. They may not be able to make the skin look normal, but I know a few who have tattoo designs over scars and you'd never know there were scars in the first place. I actually have one tattoo over a surgery scar. You'd never know it was ever there. It was a decent little bump of skin, but a bit of tattooing and all the excess built-up skin from the scar was gone. Not Home Depot, But we had a customer come in with the statue of the baby Jesus from her church's nativity scene. The paint was chipped and she said the price to replace the statue was too high, so she asked us to see if we could match it. The woman working the paint desk with me said she'd give it a try. She succeeded. That's right. She color matched the baby Jesus. The weirdest thing I personally had to color match was one layer of a sandstone sculpture, several shades of brown, and the customer wanted to paint a room the color of this layer. The layer was just barely wide enough for the matching computer to read. Well, I don't work at Home Depot, but I work at a automotive paint job. I had a black gentleman come in about 6 months ago. He's been a customer of mine for years. He informed me he needed me to match something in his car. This isn't uncommon. We go outside to scan, look at colors daily. When I get out there, he opens the back door and grabs a prosthetic leg. The problem is they sent it to him to wear, but it was for a white person. He said he couldn't be walking around in shorts with a white leg lol. So he hands me one of his older black legs and asks me to match it best I can. It didn't take long and he was happy with the color. I just picked a brown out of the book and tinted on it till it looked close enough to what he had before. That sucks that the prosthetics people send him a leg that doesn't match his skin, especially since you know that thing cost a ton of money. I can only imagine the feeling of come on, what the fuck when he unboxed it. I want to say that this was done by some type of government insurance. The gentleman is over 65, served in the military. He called them about it. They told him it would be months before they could get him a new one the correct color, so that's why he just decided to paint it himself. I had never asked him how he lost it. I had assumed it happened while in the military. Come to find out, my coworker had asked him previously. He didn't lose it serving. He told him he lost it chasing girls back in his younger years, something about trying to impress one on a motorcycle. Many years back I was doing an archaeology job in California. As one of the only 2 people on the team with any significant amount of native ancestry, I was teamed up with this older native fellow. When we were driving out in the back country, we'd talk about all sorts of stuff, and at one point when we were chatting about the team of folks we had with us, he came out with, "I like white folks just fine, but I sure don't want my daughter to marry one." Worked at Walmart about 18 years ago and had to occasionally run the paint area. Wife and husband brought in a 4-foot by 4-foot piece of wall that they painted. They wanted me to match it. The wife then pulls a paint splotch from her purse and says something like, "This is the paint we used from Home Depot." Some people are just born to entertain. I had a very similar experience at the paint counter when I worked at Walmart. They brought in a full-size door that was white. They had just painted it, so they didn't want to scrap off a sample for me to scan. Lady pulled the paint can label out of her purse when I said I couldn't fit the door in the scanner. Turns out they bought pure white, not even tinted at all. After my apartment flooded, the landlady had it repainted in pure white. It looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man exploded down there. Many colorful pictures and blankets started going up on the walls with a quickness. Kanye West's whole house is apparently like that. But not just the walls, even paintings that are just white, with white frames, naturally. White flowers in white vases on white counters, like really tastefully modern decoration. But all white. I worked at Lowe's, but someone once wanted the blue color of the sign hanging above the paint area. There was no way I could get the sign down to put it in the scanner. I picked a paint swatch that I thought came the closest and he agreed to it. I'd be willing to bet that the super saturated blue would be a pain in Mike. I personally come at this with an experience from the other end. I am a wood finisher, and in our industry, or at least the products my company uses, the base pigments are red, blue and yellow, plus black and white. When I was training, the trainer handed me a random bottle and told me to hand match the color printed on the label. Bluish-green color. So, add some blue, mix in a touch of yellow, some white to lighten it, and looked nothing like the label. Trainer is like, "That's fine, just keep going until you get it right." So, I try and try. After like an hour, trainer's like, "Well, You've been doing fine. I'll give it a try to figure out what you're doing wrong. He can't match it. That's when the spark goes off in my head. That's it. Luckily the trainer had a little graphic arts background and believed me about the non-overlapping color spaces thing. Kinda funny joke for a company that makes pigments to print a label in a color that you can't recreate with their pigments. Non-overlapping color spaces. I think it would be super cool for there to be an online tool that allows you to input some starting colors, RGB, CMY, RBY, etc., and then output the gamut for them. It would be an interesting way to see how starting with certain shades make it impossible or very difficult to create certain other colors. I tried looking for one for about 20 minutes and found absolutely nothing, sadly. I don't work at the Desperate, but I am a certified paint expert according to the hardware store I do work at. The weirdest thing I had to color match was a carousel horse. Well, actually the leg of a carousel horse, because that was the smallest part the customer could bring with them. I used the AskReddit Color Designer Plus system with their spectrophotometer, along with 10 years of experience, and I'm happy to say I was able to hit it dead on. I was paid for some site assessment work once, and part of that job was sitting in the hotel room at night with about 200 bags of dirt, checking them against the Munsell color charts. Best part of the job. Yep, this one's brown, but browner than the other one. Ooh, some gray. Exciting. There was about a tablespoon in each tiny bag. I looked like the absolute worst Coke dealer. I only spilled some of it on the floor too. Apologies to the hotel's cleaners. The absolute killer part of it was that the job was shallow dirt work on an active farm in an area known for virtually no soil migration. So all the samples fell within a tight range. Felt like a multi-choice test where I just guessed B and C for 200 answers. Friends asked me what my job was on site and I told them I was a consulting geotechnical analyst. Thankfully my friends know me well enough to not take any of my job titles as fact. Don't work with paint at all, but one day I got home and parked next to me was a light green Thunderbird. I said to my wife at the time, that color looks like it came off an Avon bottle. Skin so soft to be specific. About a month later the car was back and I noticed a license plate on the front with the web address. So I looked up the site and emailed the owner. Turns out he was visiting the guy downstairs from me. They were in a band together. So I went down to talk to him. I asked him about the car and mentioned my comment to my wife and he laughed. Turns out the car was originally his mother's car. She had bought it brand new from the factory just to get that color. She had sent them a Skin So Soft bottle so they could make sure they got it right. Older lady comes in with a Ziploc bag full of dirt. I figure she wants us to test its pH or something. Nope, she has a walkway, and when it rains some of the dirt from her flower bed runs onto the walkway. She wants to paint the walkway the same color as the dirt so it isn't as noticeable. I tried to talk her into using landscape ties or something to prevent the dirt from getting onto the concrete in the first place. Nope, just wants to paint it. Okay, so I asked her if she wanted the paint to match the color of the dirt when it was wet or dry. Blew her mind. I bought my house from a flipper based on the colors of the rooms and the can of paint left in the garage. There must have been a sale at Home Depot and Glidden Tea and Honey. Not bright pink like Pepto, but a color that cannot decide if it wants to be pink, tan, beige, or orange. Lol. I wonder if it was a paint color that was made incorrectly and the store marked it $5/gallon or something. My house was built in mid-80s. But is styled like the 70s. I bought it from the original owner. I think she wanted to relive her favorite decade for the next 40 octoseconds. I used to work at a Home Depot a few years ago. I mostly worked in the lumber department but worked in the paint department for my last month or so. Someone brought me a pair of shoes to color match, and they bought several gallons of the paint for a large room, so they must have really loved those shoes. If curious it was just a regular pair of shoes, I'm not sure what the significance to them was as I didn't ask. I recently spent an hour at Home Depot trying to match color swatches to my best friend's hoodie because it's the most gorgeous green I've ever seen, has a real woodsy feel, and it was just exactly what I wanted. It was hard because it's a kind of heather green, different shaded threads blended together, but we got pretty close and my room looks amazing. So I can understand that one. If you find something that's exactly the right color, even if it's a pair of shoes, or a hoodie. Spent more than a decade working at a paint store, and by far the weirdest thing I had to match was the toe beans of the customer's cat. At first I just grabbed a fan book of colors and was showing her what was in the ballpark. At this point she was holding her cat, and it was content enough in its owner's arms. This customer wanted a precise match using the color spectrometer though, and handed the cat over to me. The feline was not happy. At the very least it wasn't trying to squirm out of my arms, but it was giving me quite a stink eye and was growling the whole time I was holding it up to the sensor. Doctor, I color matched a very unhappy cat's paw. About 10 years ago I was working at Walmart in high school. This lady once came in and said she has a color in mind but can't find anything similar, so she describes it and I guess how to make close to it. It comes out and she wants me to add a little more pink to it, so I do it and mix again. This went on for near an hour, but then I finally got it right. It was a great shift. Printer dots. Can't dry a sample to that. Can't have a scanner help you with what tints to use because it's all dots. Can't scan it. You can only promise to get something close to it. It's pretty challenging if you have a picky customer. I had Lowe's match my inkjet printout of Harrison 144, yellow ochre, from a downloaded scan of a color card from 1880. They did it without any problem and the color was spot on. Turns out the formula is equal parts yellow oxide and red oxide. It was an Ace Hardware, but I knew how to do paint mixing. A guy came in and wanted a color match. I walked him over to the mixing counter and he handed me a broken off piece of wood. One of the paint stirrers you get anywhere, with a splash around the broken edge just after the handle. Some purpley lavender color. I'm just on autopilot and ask, okay, this color? He stares for 2 full seconds, not at me, at the wood, and says yeah, in a heavy tone, like it was the color of his dead wife's eyes or something. We stood in silence as I did the scan, mixed the pigments, and watched the shaker machine. We had a woman come in last summer wanting some deck stain color matched. I told her I needed a physical sample of the color on something to match it, and she explained that she didn't feel like going to her cart to grab the can. She then plopped her foot on the desk and asked me to color match a part of her foot that had gotten stain on it, and spent the solid 2 minutes trying to convince me to put her foot onto the color match machine, all while leaving her foot on the desk. In all honesty, I probably could have done it, but decided I didn't get paid enough for that shit and refused until she left. Formerly Lowe's, but I had to try to match a pillow once. It always came out light because the elastic in this fabric showed too much. The worst color match I ever had was a lady who wanted a color from the catalog, but didn't realize the catalog was printed on shitty paper. She came in the next day furious that it didn't match ... even though it was the correct color via the color code. I had to color match our own damn catalog. It was stupid. Lowe's printed paint chips famously suck at matching their formula. I have had to ask you guys to do that same thing many times. Other companies have paint chips that actually match their paint. Anyway, as a painter, we have to make the customer happy and cover our butt as well, so the final product has to match the color they pointed at. My wife worked at Lowe's and had a lady come in asking for the color of the sky. My wife told her to look at the samples and pick a color and she'd mix it up. The lady said no, I want the actual color of the sky, like she wanted her wall to look like the inside of a Vegas casino. My wife, seeing this lady is going to be a problem, asks her, what time of day do you want? If it's nighttime, I've got black. Now the lady is getting upset that she can't just buy one can of paint to make her wall look exactly like the sky. My wife finished the conversation with, bring in a sample and I'll see what I can do. Lady then proceeded to ask for the manager. Not Home Depot but a different hardware chain. Weirdest thing someone tried to have me match was a full-size picnic table that was stained translucent. A. I can't bring the scanner outside as it's connected to the computer. B. You can't reliably color match translucent stain. Sometimes people baffle me.